Hey, it's Bilal, and this is Deep Sea, the podcast about seeing the world more deeply. Earlier today, I was thinking about how many weeks it's been since I've been in self-isolation, and I think it's been around 3.5 weeks now. What's clear is that the virus continues to spread, and the number of deaths is increasing, so I imagine this self-isolation for all of us will continue for some time. An interesting development in recent days has been a shift in the recommendations around face masks. The US's CDC appears to be now recommending that people should wear some form of a face mask. Yet other countries, like here in the UK and the WHO, continue to not recommend the use of face masks for everyone. What I find interesting now is that since a number of Western countries are now starting to recommend the use of face masks, it's becoming much more acceptable for people in general to start to wear face masks, even here in the UK. If one had tried to advocate wearing face masks a month or so ago, one would have probably got a negative reaction from people around you. And this tells me, one, how we continue to look up to authority figures. Stanley Milgram, the famous psychologist in the immediate post-war period, once wrote this book called Obedience to Authority, where he tested people's willingness to impart electric shocks to others. And he found that if an authority figure told somebody to do that, they are much more willing to do that. So there is something innate in us to listen to what authority figures are saying, whether it's right or wrong. And we can see this working in real time too. Back in January, people in authority, governments in the West and so on were telling us that the virus was not so serious and it was contained within Asia. And in the UK even, we had this idea of herd immunity, which was that it's better to let the virus spread across the population rather than enforce isolation onto people. And we all followed. But now governments have shifted and we've all fallen into line. And it now really seems silly for us to not have taken it seriously. And I think we're seeing something similar with face masks now. One of the reasons for dismissing the use of face masks earlier on was the so-called absence of evidence that it worked. Yet there's a fallacy in this type of thinking because the absence of evidence isn't the same as evidence of absence. Put another way, just because we can't prove something works doesn't mean it doesn't work. It may be only later that we discover the processes and have the right experiments to prove that it works. And this also flies in the face of the so-called precautionary principle. And that precautionary principle says that in a time when you have a high amount of uncertainty and there's a high level of risk, what you should do is you should take steps that you think could protect yourself or you've heard does protect others, even if there's no evidence, if there's no harm to yourself and others. And I think the face mask comes under this category. And at a common sense level, we know that the way the virus is transmitted is through droplets entering or leaving our mouths and noses. And surely a face mask would reduce the odds of transmission of the virus. We also know that countries in East Asia, which have a lot more experience with such viruses, having gone through SARS back in the early 2000s, many of those countries, such as Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and China, people regularly and commonly wear face masks. So based on all of this, this would all tell us that wearing face masks makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, one reason why governments may have been recommending against wearing face masks was that there were limited stocks of face masks. So they didn't want health workers to not have enough face masks. But again, if governments really wanted those face masks, they could just buy them themselves or just manufacture them themselves too, which is what countries in East Asia did. So I plan to wear face masks whenever I leave the house, and I'm sure many more will. And in a strange irony, when you think about this further, there's actually already a segment of population that covers their face. These are ultra-Orthodox Muslim women, who are sometimes called niqabis. They cover their face, and in recent years, there's been a societal backlash against their choice of clothing, and some countries like France have actually banned the covering of faces. So, if we all are going to start to cover our faces, some of those laws will have to be changed, and in a funny way, we'll be following those ultra-Orthodox women and becoming niqabis ourselves. In the house, of course, I'm not covering my face, and so I was able to show my face on my Zoom birthday party yesterday. Yesterday was my birthday, the first birthday party in the COVID era in our household. And how else would one celebrate this with other people on a Zoom call? So Zoom, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is a video calling service, a bit like Skype or Microsoft Teams. and it allows multiple people to dial in and have a conference video call. So various family and friends all beamed in to wish me a happy birthday. And I imagine we're going to hear a lot more about Zoom birthday parties going forward. My final piece of news this week is that we got 2 chickens recently, 2 hens. In a COVID era, it's all about self-sufficiency and preparing for a shortage of food. So we're becoming preppers and we have 2 hens. We chose hens because they lay eggs and they're not so noisy. Roosters, male chickens, tend to be much more noisier and we don't want to disturb our neighbors. And actually, having hens in your garden isn't as big a challenge as you'll think. There is a startup cost in terms of setting up the chicken coop and learning about the process of raising chickens. But once it's up and running, then you just have to have a daily routine of feeding them and cleaning the coop. And in return, you get some entertainment watching these chickens clucking around. And you also get eggs every day. So each hen lays 1 egg a day. And I didn't know this, but these are unfertilized eggs, which means they'll never become chicks. They're just eggs. So now we can have fresh, free-range, organic eggs for meals. How do they taste different from eggs you get from a supermarket? Well, when you fry the eggs, the yolks seem a stronger color. They also taste a bit creamier than the normal eggs that you get from a supermarket. Some of this may just be psychological, but I do think there is a difference. And I would recommend, if you do have a garden, go ahead and try to become an amateur farmer. What else are you going to do during this period of lockdown? So that's been my goings-on during my 3rd week of lockdown. Tell me what you're up to too. You can drop me a message on Facebook or LinkedIn or send me an email. Thanks for listening. Please tell a friend about the podcast. Leave a rating on iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever you go for your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @BilalPeace123. For my research work, you can go to macrohive.com. I'll be back soon, so tune in then.